Welcome. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. Is there a motion to accept or modify the agenda?
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Is there a motion on the consent agenda this evening?
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Reports this evening. First up, we have our school resource officer report and update. Welcome. I'm sorry.
You have my ice cream, so. All right, so we didn't get to present in December. So I turned in for November and December, you guys should have in front of you. So for the month of November, we had a total of, let me scroll down, 14 incidents, which one pertaining to falsely summoning the law enforcement officer. We had a sexual extortion case. It wasn't within the school. However, the report came from a student to the SRO. So you will see that counted on there. And then we did charge a child, there was an instance with possession of child pornography. The page gets longer each month, so it's hard to kind of basically sum everything up. Let's see. There was a possession of a weapon, which was just a little pocket knife. It did not meet criteria to charge, so it was less than the criteria needed for that. And then for the month of December, we had a total of 19 incidents. So as you can see, we've gone down, especially from October where we had 38. We went to 14 in November and 19 in December. So a lot of that could be because of the breaks and things, but we're seeing, it seems to be a decline in everything altogether as well. Additionally, I believe it was in November, our youth coordinator came and spoke with you guys about the Explorer program and the PALS, the Police Athletic League. So they had their first informal meeting on Monday, where it seems to be going good. We've been getting a lot of interest of it. There were, 6 potential explorers who received additional information. And right now they're in the process of formally applying for to be able to enter into that program. They did share a photo on our Facebook page of those that were interested. Since that had been shared, we've had other children reach out, actually approaching their principals and teachers, say, hey, I'm really interested in this program. How can I get involved? So since that post and after our first informal meeting, we've gotten a lot of interest as well for people actually applying to the program. So we're really excited about that. The next focus was on the PALS, the Police Athletic League. We're still in the process of registering with the National Police Athletic League, which will, basically it's a national organization, so it will give us all the guidance on how to build and establish that program. The first part of that, though, is going to be forming a board so that we can put ideas together so it's not just coming from within, so we can have some other input from that too, along with creating bylaws to kind of govern that. Once that board is established, we will collaborate with local community members to enhance the existing programs, ensuring to effectively engage youth who may not be interested in some of the current activities that are available, but to offer more as well. So that's kind of where what we've been doing over the last couple of months is really trying to get the youth more engaged. We're still working with Mr. Wolf over at Botech to help teach to this criminal justice program. So with the new semester starting, we've been scheduling our people to go over there and work with them on those programs as well. So, any questions for me? Thank you so much.
Next up this evening, we have an ESS update. Mr. Hall and Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. So you have the report in front of you. So we'll, I'm going to let John kind of walk through the numbers that he had there. Thank you, Mr. McFadden, for all your work with the college. I know Amy's been over there, and you gave her a guided tour, and I think she's got a good relationship over there, and hopefully we can get some more kids come soon. So, but as you see, obviously we weren't here in December either, but you have November and December numbers. November's numbers looked really good, about 79% across the board, and then December was about 85%. If you look at December, you notice we filled a lot more jobs than we did the year prior. So, the subs are really coming out to work, and we're getting them to work, and the recruiting looks really good. So I'm going to let John walk through the report, and any questions that you have, please let us know.
Good evening, everybody. I don't know if we're going to the live or just can you open the...
I don't know how to put it up there for you.
No problem.
Do you guys have it in front of you?
All right. We wanted to start from the recruiting at events page. It's over there. I still have the topics there. Just some of the events that Amy's been partaking by the Career Services, Mr. McFadden. Obviously, Amy was just mentioned. Worked with, she's been at the Main Street Parade, working with the Bazaar. I just got a confirmation today from Laurel Bridge about a online job fair that they're having next month they invited us for. So we're out and about. Things are really kind of turning around. Just a review, because at this point this year, we're going to do a little bit of recap. Just some of the things other things we participated in on the next page. Community Fun Day, Pickle Stock, Celebrate Kids, the Warren County High School football game, Festival of Leaves, the Ravelry game. We had the Town Fall Fest Talent Show. We'll move on to the next page, just some upcoming things we have. School admin visits, the library puzzle competition, coffee chats at Christendom, RMC's Edge Career and Intern Fair, Shenandoah. And so, again, I just got a notification today as we were walking in about working with the Career Services at Laurel Ridge. So, a lot of great potential for us to add some new bodies and some new people to the sub-pool. If we go to the next, just comparison over the past couple of months, August, September, October. October was our big month. We didn't have any holidays. A lot of absences that month as with the flus, and I believe you guys had some things that were passing around from the schools. So that spiked that absentee rate up to that 66%, but bounced back strong, like Amy mentioned, 79%, 85% in December. Moving on to the next page again, just a year in synopsis, the halfway point. Overall fill rate would be 74.2. After we put in the building subs, we'd be standing at 81% for that period. Since August, we hired 49 new people for the Warren sub pool. And again, just kind of reiterating, we ended with that 85% fill rate for December. So, some things we have going on for this year and into next year. Still doing the Sub of the Week recognition. We have on 12 holidays each year. There was prizes working those last 12 days in December. We do survey the subs over the Christmas break, the holiday break, in order to kind of see where things are at, kind of get a feel from them, especially people that have gone through the application process, that they would do to kind of help tweak the system, positive feedback that we can offer maybe to the schools, or to help us refine it in our process, and they get to see that other side. Amy set up a Google event form for school activities and events, so be more hands-on and more activities at on the site location. She took it by hand and did handwritten thank you nights for Substitute Appreciation. We'll also have another Substitute Appreciation Week in, I believe it's March, on the calendar, where we'll, again, recognize the subs, do a little something for them again. Still continue to do our monthly newsletter. We have the month updates for those that are important. And we're working, some of the subs that ask for maybe supplemental training, so we're working with the district HR to offer supplemental tech training, things like smart boards, projectors, just the kind of things like that. Want to flip over to November. Just the snapshots, I just put 23 and 24 kind of side by side. You can see the absences there compared to the previous year, unfilled. The fill right there is that 78.6, that 79 we were talking about. On the next page, you'll see the November absences by school. The fill rates run down. You'll have the totals, the filled, unfilled, late placed absences, so those placed after the start of the assignment, quarter day assignments. You'll also see the columns negated by building subs. The building subs allocate their own absence as far as system is concerned. So as we mentioned before, that's why it'll lead to that. If you look at that after building sub rate, some of them may exceed that 99%. That's because they had building subs in place on days when they may have not needed coverage for that day as part of that program. But overall, 77% without the building subs, then 93% after the building. Move on to 24. As Andy mentioned, a lot of increase in the filled absences there, 733 from the 394. Increase in that fill rate, 85.1, where we finished at, versus 61% from 2023. So, we're over to the next page. December absences again. Same band as November, just trying to kind of keep it uniform. You'll see at the bottom, it says 86. That's my mistake. It should say 85. It did round up from 85.1 to 86, so that should be 85. And then you'll see the after building sub rate will be that 94 rate. So, also added in here, which I know is up the board's concern, the cost by billing as far as allocation to the finances. We have it month by month. That way you guys see August, September, October, November, December. The totals that the schools have allocated as far as in contrast to the budget that was billed. And then I took it a step further. And on the next page, you'll see the year-to-date budget by building and just kind of comparison. I pulled 2023's numbers just to kind of see where we're at financially, budget school by school. Because my understanding was last year the district kind of controlled it. This year the schools themselves are kind of controlling it. So from that standpoint, we'll see the negatives of those schools that have obviously less than they had spent last year. The ones that do not have the negative, the ones that are spent a little more than last year. So, and you'll see the difference down there is that 15,158 would be the total negative difference from 2023. So they're good. Did anybody have any questions about the numbers and metrics?
I have a question. It's probably more for Dr. Ballenger or Rob. What is our budget for subs this year? Total.
It's on that big.
John, it's probably a total 245, 176.
823, 823, 177.
Okay, so we're more than half spent, at least on the 449,000. That's just good to know. It's only halfway through the year, but yeah. I mean, we didn't spend more. Our budget last year was about the same, but we spent
Yeah, last year I think we were about 1.1 last year.
I think just over 1 million.
So when we're looking at this, I'm looking at page 15 of 17, and it shows the total budget of the 823,177, and then there's the column that shows the long-term subs for obviously teachers who have positions haven't been filled or whatnot. Does that count still towards the sub budget, or are we pulling that from what we had already budgeted for unbilled positions?
So those are the things, and we talked, I got to check with Ms. Drake and Mr. Ballantyne that I talked about when we get to December. We're going to look at those staff members that's filling for vacancies and then move that money down if we need to put in the sub budgets if it's needed.
So if they are truly long-terms, they'll bring that savings about 100,000 if you add the two together.
Well, I just say as one of your biggest critics beforehand, I think you guys are doing a great job. I mean, it just seems like your filler, it's on there. I believe Amy's doing a great job. It seems like she's a really good person to have here. She participated very well at Kristen when she was at meeting. And so I think it's just, whatever you guys did to turn it around, I think you've done it. It's a great job. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. We appreciate partnership and upbound or everybody to Rachel now on board and her team. They've been really supportive and like I said, Amy's been great. She's from here. She's got 3 kids in the school, so but she's out and about every day, so it's really been positive for us.
It's been a really nice team effort with everybody, especially with Drake coming in new, Kendall being here, and her, Dr. B. Just kind of the transition that we had the previous thing that was here. Like, just kind of, I like to think we breathe a new life into it. So, yeah. So.
Next up this evening, we have our action agenda. The first item is the BRTC Carpentry Program Sale of Modular House. Is there anyone here besides Mr. Gregg who would like to speak? Okay, Mr. Gregg, you're good.
Hey, everybody. I never know how good I am on the microphone. I also, while I have a chance, just want to thank Sergeant Hyduke and Sheriff Klein, everybody at the Sheriff's Office. They're huge supporters of our criminal justice program. Every other day, it seems like we've got a guest speaker coming to demonstrate something for the kids. So it really does mean a lot to us, and I thank you guys. That Explorers program is going to be awesome. I have a little buddy I need to make sure he gets his application into you. Okay. He's 6'5", so maybe I'm his little buddy big. All right, so I am here because we've had an offer for the modular house that the carpentry students have built, which is fortunate. We've made a couple attempts throughout the last several months to sell it at auction in accordance with the policy. Our first auction, we advertised for about 4 weeks in the Warren Sentinel. That was held on site at the Tech Center on July 19th. We weren't able to secure a buyer. We figured we'd try something a little different. A month later, on the 22nd of August, we had an online auction. That was through Newtown Auction Gallery out of Stevens City. We were hoping that would, do a little bit better for us. Unfortunately, we didn't have an offer after that second auction either. So in the meantime, what we've done is our carpentry kids have just continued to put some more work into the house, do some incremental improvements, while also working on some other projects. And about 2 weeks ago, we had somebody contact us with an interest to make an offer on the house. She did disclose that she has a sister-in-law who's employed with Warren County Public Schools. I believe the sister-in-law is an instructional assistant at one of the elementary schools. Her offer has come in about $5,000 higher than the minimum sale price that we're required to come up with. It basically requires us to recover the cost of materials that went into the house plus an additional 15%. So she's offered $50,000, and I would just ask that the board consider allowing us to go ahead and make that sale. It frees up our current batch of kids to start the process of building a whole new house, which is really cool. And I also think it gives the kids who put 2 years worth of work into the house that we currently are trying to sell a really nice feeling to know that, they built a home for somebody. So I just wanted to see if that is something we could maybe work on. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions for you? Is there a motion?
I move that the offer of $50,000 on the student-constructed modular home be accepted and that the superintendent be allowed to proceed with the sale.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion on that? All those in favor, aye. Any opposed? No? Thank you, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Next up, we have the second reading of the resolution authorizing the superintendent to reassign staff. Ms. Drake.
Good evening. All right, so this is our second reading for the resolution authorizing the superintendent to reassign staff. I know there were some questions maybe before looking at if we didn't implement this or if we continue like most school districts do, just because this is a normal practice through the Virginia law. Is there anything additional that I can help with or discuss since this is the second reading? I did make the changes. We have the 2 after the comma superintendent, and then and this is G, it's CI-E, and then added in to be it resolved the principal, assistant principal, as noted before for the last changes from our last meeting.
Any questions or comments from Ms. Drake?
Have you had any comments from anybody? Any teachers chime in? Or
I haven't. I did reach out to the one school where some of those, maybe concerns did come from. And it didn't happen to them. It happened to a few peers previous. Right now we are short sped teachers. And from a division perspective, if we have to move them for the needs of our students to meet the criteria, I am a proponent of we have to do what's best for the students. And I'm sure nobody wants to do that. But if it's a necessity and our hand is tied, then I think we need to be able to do that. So.
Didn't paying board members have anybody reach out? I did not hear one. No. Thank you. Next up, we have the approval of ESS addendum pay rates.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did anyone from the public want to speak on any of these items? Okay.
All right. So we know that the minimum salary threshold had went up, and obviously did not just impact Warren County Public Schools, it did impact ESS as well. So we have a new addendum with them with just an increase, and the increase is only to meet that minimum salary threshold. Just in preparation of the meeting, it was very kind of Andy and John. I said, well, what would this have looked like for us, just for perspective, like the new salary versus what we had already paid? The difference for those positions for what we actually utilized would have been $1,873.62. So it is a federal requirement. It's not something that we necessarily would like to have done because it does have an impact to our budget, but we are required to do it. But I do have the addendum with me to sign if approved.
Any questions for Ms. Drake on that item? Is there a motion?
I move that the addenda for ESS pay rates to be approved as presented, effective January 1, 2025.
Is there a second? A second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Drake. Before we hear from Dr. Costner, is there anyone here who would like to speak on the second reading of the 25-26 school calendar?
Madam Chair, Order, thank you. Tonight is the second reading of the proposed calendar for 2025-26 school year. One of the things I do want to let you know is that we did brought to our attention the federal holiday of June 19th was not on the calendar, so it has been added. But it does not affect anything else, except we want to make sure that is on there. So that is the only thing that has changed or is different from the first reading. Do you have any questions or concerns about the second reading?
I did. So last hearing, when you were here, could you explain that there was a process of 2 calendars that were produced and then they were voted on? How is that voting conducted?
The voting for the calendars?
Correct.
What we do is that the calendar committee, which is comprised of one person from each school, we came and met and they came up with 2 different calendars based on the best that we could do with everybody's input that they shared. So we took those 2 options, then those teachers took it back, had an announcement, how are they disseminate the information out to their school, and that those teachers are come in and look at option A and option B, and then they vote, and then the calendar committee submits to me, what their faculty decided on, how many decided on option A or how many decided on option B. So we tried to get everybody's input as much as we could on that.
Do we have a tally, or how are those votes? Like, what were the
votes were all in favor of calendars presented, except for one school voted for option B. All the other schools voted for option A.
But did we get the actual vote counts for each?
I did not get a total. I like a head count. No, ma'am. I did not get a head count. I just asked for what the school. If it would have been closer, say for example, if 30% were option A, and that way, then we probably would have gone in that direction. That way, everybody would have an equal vote. But since it was such almost a unanimous decision, we did not decide to move forward with an actual head count. No, there was not.
But you're not fully aware when the committee members, how they disseminate it to their people, or how that happened.
They were supposed to call up, but they were supposed to explain it to their faculty, and then they were supposed to come to that teacher's classroom to vote.
So I think we've heard from a couple of teachers that weren't sort of aware of it, or like they weren't notified, or they didn't know there's an opportunity. So
They don't like the procedure by which it was done. It was they didn't like having to go to the classroom, and certain people felt like they were kind of excluded. And the feedback that I got, and this is across multiple schools, was that the teachers would have really appreciated having like an email type situation sent out to them where they could vote, give suggestions, etc., through a more official method by which of doing it.
And thank you for sharing, because that's the first I've ever heard of it from the committee, and based on how it's been done the previous years. So we will definitely try to, moving forward, next year when we come up to go through the same process, we'll try to make sure that we can we'll come up with a process, whether even as a checklist, to make sure that every teacher's had a chance to vote. To look at it that way, we'll look at that. Thank you for sharing that. We were not aware.
I didn't get any feedback for anything positive or negative, so just to see if nobody reached out.
I didn't either, but it sounds like Google Doc or something like that would be great in the future. That way,
We can do a template with Google Forms at each school. We've done that with a lot of different surveys on some of the committees that I've worked with, because we do ask our teachers that are representative to go back, because they're representing their school. So they are the voice for their school, and it's their responsibility to push that out to the staff, to have conversations, and then to bring that information back to us. And so I know with some of the committees I've worked with, we would create a template on a Google form and then share it with those committee members, and they would just change the name of it and copy it and send it out to their staff, and then they would get that data, and then it would all be shared. So, I mean, we can do something like that.
that's easy. More uses. After it'd be more sense and start.
That's not a problem. I mean, we can make sure that happens in the future. We do rely on those teachers. They are the voice for our school. So,
I'm just curious, were the two calendars wildly different?
No, not that much. One was baseball, and it actually had more days in it versus there was a few days, but it wasn't that much of a discrepancy, because majority of the input was, we want to start later, we want to finish earlier, we want to have the long spring break, we want to have a long Christmas break. So it was a unique job. I mean, we even brought AI into it to help bring in everybody's data. I mean, we compile all the everything that every input that the teachers provided. So it was.
They can't picture there be too much that we could do with it, given all of that. But
Yeah, the biggest piece that I received was this extension past Memorial Day. And the concern is, by that point in time, so I think it's 2 days that we go past Memorial Day.
It's the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, yeah. And we have the Monday, yeah.
The 20. I'll look at this year, yeah. So SOLs have already happened at this point, and the teachers that had contacted me said, when we went from starting later to starting earlier in August, that the sales pitch on that was always, you'll be out before Memorial Day so you can get your cheaper vacation house by going earlier. They have concerns that we've worked really hard to get our attendance up for accreditation, and that now we're going to have kids who, they finished their SLLs, it's Memorial Day weekend, they're gone. So how is that going to negatively impact us with our attendance?
Well, that's a challenge throughout. I mean, as you said before, because one of the discussions was to actually take 2 days out of on Thanksgiving break and just do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But there was a concern, again, that students wouldn't come because of it. They wanted to take the whole week. There was a lot of discussion covering those issues. And then the sad thing is there's no good straightforward answer to be able to say how can we do it other than continuing to have it. And phenomenal things. I was going to brag on the technology center, of having like the house and having those things that entice the children to be there and want to be there. So but it is a unique challenge.
And then when we're going forward with doing the survey, is there any way to include parents in that as well? I'd be just interested to hear what the parents' input is on calendars.
We have with the calendar, from my information, that hasn't had parent involvement, but if that's something that the board like to us to consider, and the calendar committee would like to consider, we can look at that. I mean, anything's open for option of discussion and looking at, and we can share it with the calendar committee. One of the things is that we definitely will start a lot earlier next year, and that's, again, I take responsibility for that being the new guy, but still we can always improve.
Do you know if there's ever a time where the Virginia Department of Education gives waivers or, mulligans, or you've had a lot of school, you've missed a lot of school, and we've missed a lot of school, to be able to say, do we really have to make it up at the end? Is there ever a way to say, sorry, can we just forget about it?
There is, but one of the things that's component of it is that we have to show how we've done our due diligence to make sure that we have utilized all the days to make it up before we can ask for the forgiveness of a day. But there is something there. It's just it's a process that we have to show. And as you know, later coming up in the agenda, there's going to be a discussion about that, how we show that we've done everything we can, but we can't make up any more days. Can we get these days excused?
Right, at some point, either starting too early or starting too late, going too late is sort of, I don't know, it's like beyond what people would expect.
Any other questions to Section Whiskey? Oh, I have one actually. Has this been, because this is our second reading, I know we send out the agenda. I haven't heard from any parents. I mean, I know you mentioned like from the beginning, but now we talked about it twice and I haven't received any emails or comments. This is really the time for parents to comment, but
No. I have the only one comment that we got from any of the committee members and anything after everything was done was concern about Veterans Day, being at a full school day now. But on the flip side of that, being able to have the opportunity to actually teach our students about Veterans Day and bringing veterans in and having speakers and those things kind of, the committee, thought that would be a better process to move forward to educate our children about it.
okay. Next up this evening, we have the new walk-in freezer at Skyline High School. Anyone here besides Dr. Kosser speaking on that? Okay, Dr. Kosser.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. As you know or may recall, our summer meals program did a phenomenal job. Our folks worked diligently to serve a large number of meals during the summertime, and by doing so, we were able to. Those were reimbursable meals, and so with those reimbursable meals, we were able to. Food service was able to have their funds were increased. And right now, what they're doing is we're in the process of a spin down, and that's a requirement from the VEOE. But also, in looking at this walk-in freezer, what we're willing to do is get it at Skyline High School, where we set up the summer meals program. So that way, they can prepare the number of meals, have them there. The other thing too is even though we've got an outstanding maintenance crew, if one of our freezers goes down somewhere, we really need to be able to take that food and put it in another area, and so that would allow us that opportunity there. So we are asking to move that the MTS equipment be permitted to install a new walk-in freezer. Skyline High School will be paid for by food services in the amount of $26,885.
Any questions for Dr. Kosser?
Is any of these food service funds, is this the government funds, or federal funds, or our funds, or just out of our budget, or what?
It's how the food services funds, where they were receiving the money for the meals, for the reimbursable meals that they receive.
So that's a combination of state and federal funds that go into the child nutrition account.
And that's money we can only spend on upgrades like this.
Child nutrition. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Only on child nutrition.
Any additional questions, comments?
To their bet. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, to reiterate, that this is not local money. Your tax reassessment had absolutely nothing to do with this purchase. Correct. No.
Is there a motion?
I move that MTS equipment be permitted to install a new walk-in freezer at Skyline High School to be paid for by the food service account in the amount of $26,885.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kosser. Next up, we have the recommendation to revise the 24-25 school calendar. Is anyone else here to speak on this evening? Dr. Kosser.
Madam Chair, board members, as you know, we have some inclement weather. And this is, from my understanding, we've experienced a lot of it this year in comparison in the past. And so with that said, the safety and security of the students have always been our top priority. So we began the school year with a terrible storm that came in with sustained winds where it was not good for our buses to be on the roads. So we had to have some delays, or we had to have an early dismissal, to where that we've experienced a unique amount of snow. Particularly for myself, it's a lot of snow. So but with all that said, we do have to make sure Warren County Public Schools, we follow the Virginia law where we have to have 990 hours each school year. And that's why when you see on the calendar, on the bottom, it shows the number of days per month. And there we calculate the number of hours. Right now, when we started preparing this, we were very close to going under the 990 hours. Today, we went under. So we are now in the negative. So in order for us to make sure that we can meet those 990 hours for the remainder of the school year, we have come up with a proposal to where we are recommending to change February the 17th and April the 21st from a school holiday to a regular school day. Now, by doing that, that'll allow us more time because, as you know, tomorrow we do have a delay. So again, that's 2 more hours that we're not in school being able to instruct our students. So with that will help us to get us there. But if we continue to have some different weather patterns, then we'll have to utilize some other days. So we're asking, along with this, for February 17th and April the 21st, we're also asking that we go ahead and mark May 23rd, 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th as possible inclement weather days as needed. Now, this is not something we're going to come up with. It'll come to you each time. It'll come back to the board. We'll share with you all that. The reason that we want to go ahead and put this here is so that parents, educators can make plans. So as I'm a teacher, I know that I've got to make those plans. As a parent, I know I've got to make those plans. And some parents may already have vacation plans and everything else. I understand that. But if we do not meet this requirement of the law, then, the state can step in and pull back funding from us. And we don't want that to happen.
And I would like to interject one thing. If you guys do go ahead and designate those days as if necessary, we wouldn't have to bring it back to you. That just means as a day is used, you add a day to it. And that is all it would be. These 2 days would get us back in the positive, but it's also, these 2 days are before SOL testing, so that would be instruction happening before our assessments. The days that we're asking as if necessary are after SOL testing, and there's sometimes there's not a lot of instruction really on at that point in time, but there are a lot of activities and we can do instruction, but it's not preparing students for an SOL. The thing that we didn't want to do was take away spring break. That's we know people probably already got plans, paid for trips, so we did not want to do anything and touch spring break, so we left that alone. Option could have been to take 2 or 3 days from spring break. But if we could take these 2 days, I believe it's President's Day and then it's Easter Monday. If we take those 2 days, that will get us back in the positive. Remember, when you look at that calendar, we have an early release day also in February for parent-teacher conferences. So that's another 2 hours that we'll have to do. So that's why we were asking for the 2 days.
Those 2 hours weren't built into the original.
Well, it was already included. So when we started off, like for instance, if we had 48 hours built in, that already accounted for, the total number. We just listed the total number of hours above 990. But now that we've used all those hours, anything going forward automatically done.
Do we get 6.5 hours for each day that we had?
It's 6.5, then you have to subtract 30 minutes for lunch.
It's just 6 hours.
So it's
Still at 12 hours back from this.
Yes.
So with the mulligan that we talked about earlier, is it possible if we get another snowstorm like they're calling for, that they would be willing to just write off these extra days in May?
So, from my experience, the state has to issue that if they forgive any of those days. And typically, from my experience, it's been when there's a state of emergency that happens. And I don't think we've been under any states of emergency maybe the first. So typically that will come from, we'll get notice on that, but we haven't received any notice on that right now. The thing for me is I still want to do those days, but we can look into that, see moving forward.
I just saw a couple other questions floating around these past 3 weeks with the snow and the ice days, and so I just wanted to confirm too while we're talking about it. We can't offer virtual learning, right? There's regulations.
You are allowed to do virtual learning, but there's requirements to that. Everybody has to be able to have internet access. And in our community, not every child has internet access. And so, therefore, we could not use that and count that towards a virtual learning because we know not everybody has internet access in our school. And so, therefore, you can't count it virtual or count that day. So there are some requirements with the virtual learning that would have to go into that to prepare. And, we haven't used the virtual learning. I think a couple of years ago, we might have used a couple of virtual learning days. But since then, we have not. Last year, we didn't use any weather days. I don't think we were out one day that I could recall. There might have been one day or so, but it wasn't anything like what we've experienced this year or anything like my first year here. So I remember my first winter here in Warren County. We missed quite a bit of school due to snow in December and into January. So right now, these 2 days will get us back in the positive where we need to be. And then the if necessary would just be if we miss a day, then we add a day. And we could check in to see if there's going to be any relief coming from the VDOE or from the governor's office concerning anything with days. But again, we have to make our good faith effort to try to make up those days.
The other thing that I think was being asked a few times, probably from years ago, we used to have special snow routes in the county, and we don't do that anymore.
So not to my knowledge that since I've been here, we have not had snow routes. And typically your snow routes, it's still going to require parents to get there. So with a snow route, if a parent can't get out, their child's not coming to school. So then again, you're disadvantaging that student that can't get to school either. And so it becomes an equity thing when it comes to our buses a lot. And I could tell you, Brian's, I want to say, give Mr. Helmick and his crew, they've been working hard on this. We actually had to use a bus with the chains to try to bust up sheets of ice at Skyline Middle School and out at out on Westminster, because what happens when the snow comes, everybody wants to go sledding, so they all go to the schools. So they pack that snow in our driveway. Then it freezes, and it freezes with a 3 to 4 inch block of ice. And so then it makes it tougher on them. So if we can't beat the parents and the students that are going to go sledding, they have a hard job to try to get the lots of the loops clear. And that was one of the issues that we were having. Now, I will say also I want to recognize VDOT. Mr. Mitchell reached out to them again, and they were out hitting, I think we had another 7, 8, 9 roads that were still just hacked. And they went out and did them today, and they're actually going to mobilize and go out before we do 2 hours before our routes start tomorrow, and try to help us in salting and making sure that we can in plowing and making sure that they're there to support getting our buses through. So we used everybody we can to try to get into school, but we still have issues with some of our parking lots where ice is still packed. Now, today helped that out a lot, and I think we're all clear now at all our lots, but it's been a process this go around, with especially how low the temperatures have got. So every time you would get something clear and it refreezes at night, it's just, and you know what that hill looks like in Skyline Middle School. If parents parking their car there and then they start sliding back down that hill, you know, that's just, it's not a good situation. But anyway.
Is there a motion on this?
I move that the Warren County School Board approves the recommendation to change February 17th and April 21st from a school holiday to a regular school day, and to mark May 23rd, 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th as inclement makeup days to use only as necessary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion on that? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you, Dr. Professor.
Yes.
All right, moving into the work session this evening. First up, we have the dark fiber lease in the E-rate category 1, Mr. Stefdowski.
I'll stand here so we have some microphone action. My goal really was to try to share a little bit about both of the E-rate categories, so kind of highlight what are some of the needs that we're trying to address with the E-rate discounts, and the costs that we might need to ask for in next year's budget to be able to match those things. But the E-rate category 2 wasn't finalized until earlier this week here. So if you want, I can share what information I have on that as well. But right now, my goal is really just to kind of talk through the dark fiber lease, kind of what's the purpose, and hopefully talk about what we try to address with that. So, as you know, we own our own and maintain our own fiber network for the Warren County Public Schools. That's about 11 plus miles of fiber to stretch all over the place. It was built in 2007, so it's getting up there in age. And throughout the years, we've had many times we've had to repair it and deal with these kind of things. So really what we're looking at with this dark fiber lease would be a way to sort of continue to provide a reliable network for our school systems. And by doing so, it would help kind of reduce some of our maintenance costs, provide stability and not only being able to calculate what we're paying for those kind of maintenance each year, performance, being able to have every time there's a breakage and that has to be repaired, we have degradation in the signal strength and those kind of things of time. And also with the dark fiber, it provides another layer of security. Right now, our network is secure because we know it. Dark fiber is another option that would allow us to kind of like have control over that network. And it's also a scalable option. So right now we would be able to lease 2 strands of fiber. We could always upgrade that to another up to 4. So if we ever need higher performance, we have that capability by doing so. So with this process, we followed the E-rate process, put it out for RFP, and we had 3 bids come in. And the one that we selected was Chantel, primarily because they had the best cost, as they were the only vendor that offered a dark fiber option versus lit, and there's a couple different ways you could look at that, but essentially a dark fiber network is one where we have all the hardware that provides the light the system. So we have the surfers, the switches, all that kind of stuff in house. So really, we're just leasing the fiber strands themselves. If we were to go with the lit option, it's much more expensive generally because we have to use all of the service providers' equipment as well. So it's one of those kind of things like looking at these kind of things just to give you an idea of the cost. So for Chantel, it would be $4,500 per month. And that is, the next option was $20,610 to call.
Chantel did not have any upfront or fees. The next version had a $500 one-time fee, and the highest bid came in with a $237,000 and change one-time fee and $27,000 per month. So you have to take into consideration also that that's the top cost, you know, but E-rate would provide the discount rate, so we actually would be paying less than that. So it's one of those kind of deals where when you take in it's $4,500 per month, we actually only pay 30% of that. So it's really just kind of a way we're trying to look at how this could provide a long-term solution for us to really not have to maintain this system, have more reliability. Where Chantel's lease came in with if there's a problem that they would have a 4-hour response time to respond to us. They're working on looking at some of the history. We've had at least one repair that we've had to pay for each year as I was going back through these things. And some of the costs for repair, the highest one I found was just a little over $50,000 for a one-time repair. And that was one that had knocked out a section of fiber that services Ward County Middle School and LFK. And they were down without internet services for, what was it, like 17-ish days or something in that range? 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. So considering if that would have been during an SOL testing window, we would have had to try to figure out a schedule to get those kids to test in other schools and things like that. Whereas the Chantel would have, I would imagine, the resources to be able to have that stuff in stock to go ahead and repair the stuff versus us trying to source it. Right now, we actually contract with the company in Pennsylvania. They have to drive down here to come repair our fiber lines. So I'm just really trying to look at a way how that could address the need of making sure our schools have a reliable fiber service. I'm going to point out that this does not cover any of our non-school buildings, so we still would have to maintain for the school board office transportation and maintenance. But considering that those buildings are pretty close to a lot of our schools, it would be something that we could discuss and make sure, like, if it's ever a problem, we could probably try to contract to run some lines for the schools in that way. So this would be, like I said, there's nothing here that's finalized on this yet. The idea on this would be to sign a 13-year lease, and that it's all contingent, of course, on whether we have funds appropriated for it and whether E-rate provides the discounted funds for it. Otherwise, we're not under any obligation to pay for this. That was another key part in the Chantel contract that is very was appealing to me, versus some of the other ones that said once you sign it, you're obligated to pay for it. Doesn't matter whether or not E-rate gives you those discounted funds. So the idea here would be we'd really need about it's $54,000, I think, if we did the math for the whole year, but it would actually only be 30% of that. So was that 16,000 some change there? A 16,200 a year to be able to lease these out.
So that would be one area where we need some additional.
We had this conversation about 2 or 3 years ago. Gentleman was trying to do a lease, in it, but never came.
Mr. Grants brought it up, and then Doug actually spoke about it last year. And if you remember, Doug did put this in for E-rate. E-rate denied it, and then he appealed it once or twice.
Yes. So we've been trying for this for several years. Mr. Grant had tried. It had been denied for I believe a clerical error.
And this past year, same thing. There was something in the process. They said that according to the rules, when you put it out for RFP, you have to state that you want bids for both lit and dark fiber. It's just according to the E-rate rules, and which is fine. I don't mind. I'm a rule follower, so it's one of those kind of things. They said that it was not clearly stated in the RFP, but in my opinion, it was. We did an amendment to say, like, hey, we're accepting bids for this, but I wasn't going to argue for it because I'm like, well, we can always just try again. So here we are, third time. Hopefully this will be the one that's the charm. to just try to help kind of manage that system here. If there's any questions that I can answer for you, I'd be glad to do so.
With a 13-year lease, does the price go up each year, or is there a set price for 13 years?
Yep, this is it.
Do you feel like the chance, since it's been such a trick to get E-rate funding for it, what's the likelihood that it would renew every 3 years?
I feel like this year, working with the consultant, we were very clear when we were putting out the RFP that the language stated we were accepting bids for both lit and dark. We received both of those with the 3 vendors. So I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible through the whole process of what's going on.
If we do get the E-rate funding, would that be for the whole 13 years, or would we have to every year as again and again?
No, we have to apply every year. So if the other category one, the service that we apply for is actually for our internet service, which is also with the Chantel, and we have to apply for that every year as well.
But if we were to be approved, we would expect to continue to be approved, or not necessarily?
Yeah, once you're approved for those sorts of for the category one stuff, then it almost becomes just kind of like checking boxes. So it's really just kind of getting through this first hurdle here, and then trying to make sure that we have the funds appropriated so that we can meet that need.
So you'll bring it back when you know if it was approved?
The general things here, if you're okay with it, I would sign it and submit it, and then it still has to go through the E-rate approval process, and then once we get to that point, then I would bring it to you all and say, hey, can we please can we have the funds appropriated, or if there's a way that we could sort of try to build some of this into the next year's budget so we could go ahead and say that we have some robo to or having Mary. You don't have to. We can't make that magic happen today, but yes, I will bring it back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up this evening, we have instructional expectations. Ms. Bragg. Good evening. I would like to share with the board the Warren County Public Schools instructional expectations document that was designed to provide guidance to ensure the use of effective instructional practices in our schools. The document details the instructional resources and division purchase curriculum materials that are available to our teachers that can be incorporated into their lesson planning and lesson delivery. Additionally, it discusses for administrators the expectations that directly align with this year's professional development to increase the capacity of our instructional leadership corps so that they may guide schools through improvement and positively impact the development of the teachers and the students in their building. The document includes the sections. They're broken out initially for elementary, middle, and high school. And the information that is in this document is not new information. It is organized just as a reference resource to help support administrators and teachers so that we're all on the same page and understanding the primary curriculum that should be used in our classrooms. So when it references the specific textbooks and things like that, that is not new and has been included and linked in those enhanced pacing guides that has been supported by our IRT through development with teachers in English, math, and science. Also on the last page, you will find the section, there's a few bullets there for administrators that again aligns to the instructional leadership practices that we are currently engaged with. We're working with Chris Jones from VASCD to lead our instructional leaders through training on how to provide good instructional observations and feedback that helps to move our teachers and our students forward. Additionally, and I have it here for you, I talked to Dr. Ballenger about it. After I submitted this document, I feel like the piece that's missing is the division level piece. That's okay. So the At the very bottom of the page, you'll see that we've added a few bullets for the role of the instructional resource team, which is the team that I work with that helps to support our teachers and our administrators through some of this. And so, as I was reflecting on it and getting ready to post it, I thought it would be nice for this document to lead all the way up to the division level and it include our role, instructional resource team's role in supporting these initiatives, whether it's the incorporation of coaching, instructional partnerships with our teachers to help support these resources, or with the professional development that we're doing with our administrators. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the document.
Is this a new document, or is this just a revision of, you do this every year?
This is a new document that Dr. Ballenger asked that we put together and prepare for, to disseminate to about the full staff.
And I think this is mostly, correct me if I'm wrong, it's mostly just to see, we know what curriculum is being used at each of the elementary schools, but just to have it all consolidated into one place that this is.
Yes, and it's also to serve that we need to make sure that we are using resources in our classrooms that are proven resources. And so if we're going to purchase a textbook, we don't want that textbook being used as a doorstop or collecting dust on the shelf, and then this teacher's out here using some other thing that's not getting our students where they need to go. And so when we look at where we're struggling, and this is just a part of turning things around in the division, because our test scores started to slump, and as we looked at things, we were like, okay, we need to address this, we need to address it. Curriculum was one of those things that we needed to address, and the use of curriculum properly was something that we had to address. And so this gives our teachers they know what our expectations are. You are to teach this because we know this is a proven material. It's going to get us where we need to go. And if you're not doing that, then we're going to have a different conversation, because we have to be held accountable for the product that we're putting out. And if we're not using solid resources in our classrooms, then our students are going to suffer. And so that is the whole purpose of this. I did this when I was in Oklahoma, and we will ask the board to vote on this, because this is something that it needs to be from the top down, and we all need to be on the same page with, we are doing these things as we move forward. And that way, if somebody doesn't want to use something, well, we have to. You have to. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. This is what we're requiring you to do. Anything else you want to add on there, Ms. Bragg?
Well, I'll just say that, as we move into budget season, these are the resources that have been selected by the division, and those that are specifically listed out, and we hope to expand on that in coming years. I would like to see the social studies curriculum needs some updated resources so that we can provide that support to our teachers in those social studies classrooms as well. And so, where teachers get some say in those resources that we use is through those textbook adoptions. And sometimes we do get pushback with, well, who picked this book? I wasn't here when we picked this book. That is the nature of a textbook adoption. Textbooks adoptions usually last for somewhere between 5 and 7 years. And so that doesn't mean that everybody that's teaching in our schools today was necessarily on that textbook committee. But, we do use teacher input when we're going through the textbook adoption process specific to those resources listed here. I will put an asterisk beside a few of the things under elementary English, such as the UFly and integrity, because that's all part of that Virginia Literacy Act, where we can only use materials off of the state approved list, and it is what it is because it's the law. But for the most part, that process is where teachers can play a role in input
Also, the work that's been done on IRT with those enhanced pacing guides, we're still using the CIP pacing, but our team has met and worked with teachers, and they're working through different grade levels with all the updates to SOLs and English and math, and science has already been done last year. To have input, to link the best instructional resources. We have to put the best instructional practices in front of our students. And that also includes things like on grade level material. Our students in 5th grade have to be exposed to 5th grade reading level material. We can't continue to lower the bar and expect test scores to improve. It's just
Right to occur. Because you have to stretch. You have to challenge for growth to occur. If we're not challenging, then growth is not going to occur.
Do you feel right now that it's a little bit teacher's choice to what books they want to teach out of, or it's not universal? Is that why this is needed?
I do think this is needed. I do think to some degree that there is a long-standing, decades-long culture in Warren County that, I can pick and choose what I want to put, in front of my students and that sort of thing. And we're trying to address that. That's not to say that the resources that are being, chosen are necessarily bad or not optimal, but we need to have a common approach so we can have common conversations about what the learning in our classroom looks like. And one of the things that our instructional observations has shown that we have been working on with our administrators is that we need to be providing explicit instruction to our students and opportunities for them to learn and engage with the material. Our observations tend to show that we provide a lot of opportunities for students to review material, but where is the new learning happening? And so, we're working to address that with our administrators. We move into the second semester with the training from Chris Jones. It's explicitly about feedback to teachers and how to help feedback become actionable, not just you're a great person and you're doing a good job, but how can we grow you? One of the things we've talked about a lot with him is that our teachers deserve a year's worth of professional growth in the same way that our students deserve a year's worth of learning growth. And so in our efforts to provide that and to set forth the expectations of the materials and resources that they're to be using with their students, I do think that it can help support us to get there. And again, IRT provides that support through coaching partnerships. We're not just saying, here's what you're supposed to be doing, and if you don't understand it, sorry about your luck. We're saying, reach out to us. We will work with you. We will help you. We can be there to support your inclusion of these materials if you're just getting started with it or if you need that training and support along the way. We're happy to provide it.
And we do have some adoptions that are going to be coming up.
We would like.
And, it comes to the point, when you're spending $800,000 to $1 million, $800,000 to $1 million on textbooks, and if people are using them, then was that worth it? So
Yeah, and it's disheartening because, those resources are designed by professionals and doctors and, that are on those panels, and they have teams across the country that are saying, this is best instructional practices. They're vetted and they're put forth. And I know sometimes it's hard. They don't know my students. They don't know where we are. And that's true. They're not in your classroom necessarily, but they are setting the standard of where we need to be getting. I don't think Warren County kids are substantially different than, kids across the country in what we want them to be able to do and the education we want to receive.
So you'll be seeing this come up for a vote, in a future meeting to adopt this as, it has a required version.
And then once it's approved, moving forward, we do a new adoption. It'll get changed every year.
Yes, ma'am. We would update that every year. I mean, I would like to bring that forward every year, so it's just affirmation of the leadership that we are doing this. And it stays at front and center. It's done every year. And then we modify it, do the changes that we need to do, whatever it may be. If we're changing some PD with the admin, that may be different in a couple of years. And so just make those changes each year but bring that to the board before each school year.
I have a question that, again, it's my lack of knowledge of some of the days ins and outs, but growing up, one of the ways I learned the most was by doing a lot of homework. Do we have a policy on homework, or like what the expectation? I mean, we're talking about instructional activities. Obviously, that's the teacher doing it. The learning expectations generally happen. You teach the thing. You can't do it all at class. People are supposed to do it. Sort of. Let me try it on my own at home and see how well it works. Do we have any policies on homework? Like each should be given this many hours per this age level. There's no homework given.
There aren't homework guidelines for the grade levels or something like that. Homework is most likely addressed in our grading regulation. I would have to go back through it to look specifically for, how homework, if it's addressed directly in there, or if it's just more in a general statement like what's in your syllabus or something like that. I'd have to pull that to look directly for the homework piece. We do not have specific guidelines. I can say that just in education in general, there has been some trend away from the days of like what you're describing, what I experienced as well, of a ton of homework going home every night because of the situation of, different families and that sort of thing. Homework, when done properly, can be a great learning tool. Assigning loads of work that I'll just classify by that term as busy work is not helpful to the student, and it's shown that homework does not oftentimes, in the way that it's typically been subscribed as you and I were sitting at home doing it, was necessarily a big mover in student learning. I'm not against homework, but I think it has to be done in the right way and not just, here's 37 problems for you to do every night.
I did about 80, but yeah.
There you go. See, the research would show you didn't need to do 80. You should go back and take that off with your teacher.
I hated it, but I'm so thankful I have.
Research showed 10 would have worked.
But there aren't specific homework guidelines for a required amount.
Any other questions, discussion on this evening? Next up, we have the Family and Community Comprehensive Plan update. Ms. Sperling.
The Sperling, instead of you staying there, do you want to go sit right here? No, you didn't. Just you consider it. If I should have drunk a mic up there, drink it out there.
No problem. Good evening. I'm pleased to share with you tonight an update to the family and community portion of the Warren County Public Schools Comprehensive Long Range Plan. And I believe that you have the slides in front of you. Okay. This just initial graphic is important because it just focuses us that students are at the center of everything and they benefit from all of the partnerships that we'll discuss this evening between families, schools, and our community. So the comprehensive plan has 3 objectives in this section for family and community. The first objective is to increase communication with parents and guardians concerning instructional, recreational, and safety-related initiatives on a weekly basis as evidenced through teacher contact logs, website updates, social media updates, and communication through the school's learning management system. The second objective is parent involvement will increase by 10% annually through documented participation in school-related activities. And the third objective, add 5 new community partners each year to build community relationships and partnerships that will help promote student success. So I've broken this down by elementary and secondary updates for each of the objectives. So the first objective, again, focuses on increasing communication about school-based events with parents and guardians. And at the elementary level,
all Warren County Public Schools elementary schools use Class Dojo. They communicate with parents through school-wide messaging using that application, whole class messaging, as well as sharing information and announcements by the teacher. And it also allows for that individual two-way communication between the teacher and the parent. And of note, and really a great support, is that all of those messages can be translated through Class Dojo of 130 different languages to be able to really make that communication accessible. Most of the elementary schools they're leveraging social media to update families about their events, the positive things that are happening in their schools, and to highlight important upcoming dates. And Power School's School Messenger being used to send those robo communications. At the secondary level, similarly, with increasing communication, the middle schools use a weekly newsletter to all families. So both Skyline Middle School and Warren County Middle School use those weekly newsletters. And all teachers are asked to make 5 parent contacts per week and log those contacts. That's not limited to 5 contacts, but it should be at a minimum of 5 personal contacts made to families each week. They are using social media and other push notification apps to leverage those updates for things like family events. Again, things that are going well and exciting things happening in the school. And then the Power School Messenger that is being used.
Can I ask the question about first
please.
objective? Sounds like you're doing great work on it. The one thing I would say about a strategic plan is sometimes they want data, want evidence, and I actually set as evidence through teacher contact logs, website updates, social media updates. It'd be great to be able to say, before we started this thing, we would update our web page 3 times a year, but over the past 5 years, it's been this. So actually having some real data to go with it would be very beneficial, I think, to be able to show the growth from A to B.
Yes, absolutely agreed. And you'll see with the next objective, it's very specifically mentions a metric, but it's very hard to establish that. But I agree that we could modify some of these objectives to make them more measurable. Absolutely agree.
Just saying this one, you could measurable, saying, we have, again, just the website updates or a fact you can go back in time and look at and see how often do we do them. Social media updates, it's easy to go back and count them if you have them to the point. So it would be good to be able to show that there was an actual increase thing, because I'm sure we did social media updates and website updates prior to this then.
Yes.
This is meant to say we're doing more, and the way you show the evidence is by saying, well, we had 5 and now we have 10.
Sure. I know. So I gathered, the way that I did this was I reached out to all of the school administrators. I gathered their individual data and then kind of summarized it based on elementary and secondary. There are some schools that are maintaining a little more close data, particularly with social media. I know Skyline High School had some metrics using the system that they use. They also kind of highlighted a specific person to be responsible for that, who's able to track that information. So I think that's something, just a metric moving forward that we can take a look at.
Great.
Well, while we're on that subject, who is running the Skyline High School Facebook page? I had some questions about that.
That is the attendance secretary, Ms. Trano.
Is there any, the feedback that I've gotten is that certain schools do have more active Facebook pages than others. Is there any, how are you choosing who's running them? Is there any training with regard to social media?
I can't speak to that. I can defer. I don't know if there are any specific guidelines. I know in my personal experience, I've made updates, as well as we selected some office staff. Basically, at Skyline High School, there were people that were the holders of the knowledge of these are the flyers, these are the upcoming fundraisers, these are the upcoming events. There was one point of contact that perhaps club sponsors would send their information to be shared. That I can speak personally to that. But beyond that, I can't comment specifically.
And typically it's going to be an office staff person that is, where all that information is coming in. And I know before also, and I think, Doug's still back there, but previously, like with our school website updates, it used to be our ITRTs that were updating the websites. And now we did a lot of training with office staff, and so now secretaries could also, and our administrative assistants can also update those websites. So now it's not just one person that was kind of the holder to the passcode and get into the system. We have more people doing that, but the administrators at each school will kind of appoint somebody, or somebody will kind of in that role that will kind of keep their Facebook page updated or their social media updated. And it may be the administrator if they want to take on there. I could tell you for our office, I know Odalis has kind of picked up that role for us and is kind of doing some sort of stuff on the Facebook for us.
All right. The second objective, again, very specifically talks about increasing parent involvement by 10% annually through documented participation in school-related activities. This one, I have information to share. It is without a specific metric of there were this many people that attended STEAM night last school year. There were this many people that attended this school year. I think that is something that we could ask our schools individually to maintain some of that data, but I don't have that data to share with you tonight. I do have to share that elementary schools, all of them work very collaboratively with their parent-teacher organizations. Those are extremely valuable partnerships, and they kind of ebb and flow with membership of the school, but we're really seeing them begin to thrive again, which is really exciting. In addition, those family engagement nights that relate to curriculum or just, plain fun events that schools do. I mentioned a STEAM night, literacy nights, fall fairs, turkey trots, color runs, Halloween hikes, back to school picnics, and the ever popular scholastic book fairs that really draw in a lot of families on their family evenings. Parent-teacher conferences also advertised and attendance really encouraged to have that open dialogue between our parents and our teachers about our students' successes and areas in which they need to improve. Also, fine arts, choral programs, and one of the community favorites, particularly at elementary school, is the Thanksgiving lunch, where we get hundreds of parents that come in and are able to eat lunch with their child on that week right before the Thanksgiving break. In secondary school, very focused, a lot of secondary athletics. There's a ton of arts opportunities that parents are heavily involved in, co-curricular organizations. Really, those things draw the most family participation at the secondary level. Boosters programs, our marching bands that have their boosters that support them as well. The FFA programs, ESL night. Warren County High School in particular cited that they had their largest group of parent participation at their ESL night. So that was exciting to see as well. Class events, specifically like senior activities. The beginning of the year, the senior sunrise, and then at the end of the year, the senior sunset. Draws a lot of parents' participation as well as support to make those things special for students. And again, with the parent-teacher conferences advertised and attendance, we'd like to see more attendance at our secondary schools with our parent-teacher conferences. And again, I do agree that some metrics can be added to this because I don't have that data to share with you.
I think to add to what Mr. McFadden was saying earlier about that, I mean, all of these things that you have listed for elementary, I know that at least through Resi and even Skyline Middle School, like for some of their events, they listed how many people have attended, but it's going to be creating that habit then of actually recording that somewhere, because I know once they have the event, everyone wants to talk about how successful it was and how many people came and how many kids and parents, but it's probably not being documented beyond that announcement. That
certainly not in one consolidated location to track that. Absolutely.
So that'll just be kind of a habit change to try this maybe.
So the third objective is to add 5 new community partners each year. This one is much easier to track. And it's exponentially, I think this year, looking at the responses that came in from individual schools, we have those organizations that have consistently been involved with Warren County Public Schools year after year, but there are lots and lots of new organizations that are coming and supporting in small and extremely large ways. So at the elementary, the list there, the Warren Coalition, long time, involvement. Fox's Pizza Den, again, long time involvement with them. Play favorites, the Rotary Club, Kiwanis, the Public Library, the Elks Lodge, Forest Man, Martin's, Apple House, Dollar General Distribution Center, Walmart, National Media Services, Shenandoah Valley Orthodontics, Chipotle, On Cue, Brick House, CNC Ice Cream, Jay's Fun Factory, the 4-H Center, Connected Communities, the Educational Endowment, always a huge supporter. Backpack Buddies through various local churches has consistently been longtime supporters. And you heard last month about the new partnership with the Hype Kids Foundation. There are many common organizations that support all of the elementary schools across the board. There are some, perhaps they have a relationship, maybe their child goes to that school. Some are specific to each school. But this list, I think, can't even begin to touch the greater list of folks that are supporting in our schools. And then at the secondary level, again, just exponentially increases from there. I know at Warren County High School, they do a program called the Building Block Partners, and they have added multiple new partners this year with that. The Warren Coalition, reaching out now over the last several years, has been a huge supporter and offer of great things for our kids to be engaged in. Jennifer Avery, Blue Ridge Hospice, Connected Communities, the I Love You Guys Foundation with school safety specifically, Blue Ridge Hospice, the Rotary, Kiwanis, Laurel Ridge Community College and their workforce solutions, Northwestern Community Services Board, the Milton Hershey School, Moose Lodge, National Federation of State High School Associations, Project Courage, Project Graduation, Student Angel Network, Warren County Habitat for Humanity, the Heritage Society, and of course the Educational Endowment. And again, some of them are specific to one secondary school or another, but by and large, all of these groups are just wide supporters of our public school system.
Again, for the reporting thing, that it could be cool to have a 2021, 2022, 2023.
Yes.
The new ones, because as you said, some of these have been here for a long time, and we're very thankful to them. It'd be nice to know who are the new ones that joined the team this year, and the next year, who are those 5 people?
And even some of the dollar amounts that the contract has to be logged.
And some of it is financial support, but some of it is volunteer support. It is, coming out and supporting that STEAM night or that literacy night. It's there is support beyond just fiscal and donations.
Yeah, right. And the reason that we're requesting that is because the trainings that we've done with regard to our comprehensive plan tells us that if we have a data-driven one, then come budget season, we have something easily, readily available to present to the Board of Supervisors to justify our asks for financing. And so I think it would be helpful to show, hey, on top of what our tax dollars are providing, we have these community partners that are providing X amount of service, volunteer hours, X amount of dollars in this method to show the community buy-in as well.
Absolutely. And the last section here is for specifically Blue Ridge Tech Center. While secondary school, I wanted to kind of tease that out a little bit because their community support is so specific to the trades and to the vocational training, and they really rely heavily on those community partnerships to not only to provide, the donations, but also providing our students opportunities to engage in like real life engaging opportunities on the job, to go out and shadow a tradesperson. So, specifically looking at hiring and career events, they do mock interviews. Work-based learning opportunities are really becoming a huge thing for our students. Paid internships, externships, job shadowing. We work very closely with Laurel Ridge Community College, their Workforce Solutions Center, and tons of other area employers. And there's some that were listed here: AirServe, a steel company, Heritage Hall, Valley Health, Dyno Electric Company, IVEW, Local 26, Lance Construction, Local 206 Steam Fitters, Luckstone, Marlowe Motors, Torrey Plastics, the Warren County Sheriff's Office, TSA, and many others. And Blue Ridge Tech asked that we shared. They're definitely going to be continuing to add to this list. They are planning a spring hiring event for high school seniors this April. So that list is going to grow exponentially from there as we add additional community partners. But overall, we're very fortunate to have established these close relationships and support from so many of our community partners. May I answer any additional questions?
No, I would just say it's a great report. It has a lot of great information in it, and obviously there's great things happening. The only thing, just again, to materialize and put numbers on it and have charts so it's just easily digestible because I would like at the end to show the community, look, hey, we had this strategic plan for 21 to 26. Here are the results. So rather than having a narrative with it, we just have easier charts and then, sort of narrative below it with benefits. It sounds like you're doing it all. It's just a matter of, well, did we meet the specific actual objective state? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the more we talk about this and have the presentations at the board meetings, especially when it's live streamed and on the Royal Examiner and whatnot, it's if we give the recognition to the community partners, it's just going to encourage more support for our schools.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
Thank you.
I can't try to fix the heater up there. I don't think the roof's gonna fall. I think up there on top, it's definitely got a cold roof. I'll just kick back on. Okay. That's a good sign. Oh, hearing all that rumbling above us is a good sign? Okay.
Belly?
That's a good sign.
Before you get started this evening, just want to remind everybody that there's a public hearing on the budget to start coming to speak to us about what is important to parents, teachers, administrators, community members, anybody who wants to talk about it. That's at our February 5th.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. And then we'll have a second one in March, on March 5th.
Yes, but the February 5th one is the one where they're hearing the input before the budget is really
Before I down my proposed budget. Yes, ma'am.
But yes, we want to see everybody in March too, but February is really the time to start collecting that budget piece. June is a little late. June is late.
So tonight, Madam Chair, the purpose of this is to just kind of go over kind of where we're at with the board and kind of see if there's any, initiatives or priorities for the board as we move into this. I've been working with the budget committee. We actually had our first meeting back in November, and so we've been meeting pretty regularly, going over a lot of information to digest on from the budget committee side. But tonight, I just kind of wanted to give, here's kind of where we're at. This was the request. This is kind of our non-labor, so that we put our information out there. Let the board members see it, let the public see where we start from, and then kind of where we're going to wind up. And what I present in November the 19th with the superintendent's proposed budget. So tonight we have some documents to go over, and I'm going to ask Mr. Ballantyne to walk us through those documents. I'm also going to bring up Ms. Drake. Ms. Drake, you can come on up. She's going to go over the salary scales because we have made some changes to our salary scales. it's a different format. And, there has also been some adjustments that we've made to the salary scales. And so we want to, get that out for the board members so that you could see that. So the first thing I want to start with is kind of when looking at the document, it's going to be the non-labor budget development fixed cost EDF. This is a document that's coming basically from a Title I audit that we had, where when breaking down our school funding on the non-labor side, you had some schools that were funded maybe at $120 a student, some were maybe funded at $110 a student. And so according to Title I, all schools need to be funded at the same dollar amount for their level. So when you look at this document, and we'll also look at another document as well, but you can see that for starting with FY26, I have there listed $125 at elementary, $215 at middle school, and $240 at high school. That would be per student. And then you can see in FY27 it stays the same. Then in FY28, that would be a 2% increase. So I'd go to 128, 219, 245. Stays the same in FY29, and then in FY30 it would be a 1%. So one of the things you're going to find when we look at our next document is that some of our schools have been funded at the same level since 2015. Well, even before 2015 at the same level. So for 10 years, they've been at that same level. Even though we know inflation typically 2 to 3% every year, and then just in the past couple of years, inflation has really get hard, and so that reduces the buying power that our principals have for our staff in the schools, because copy paper goes up. That means we'll buy less supplies for our teachers because we're having to buy this over that, and priorities are having to be made.
Can you just clarify too, so the public and everybody will know specifically what that non-labor budget is, because it does directly impact, how much paper each school can purchase and supplies, and how, each school is allotted. I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but just want to be very specific so everybody knows, because, the cost of paper is obviously a lot more than it was 10 years ago, and they're still budgeted at the same amount, but we're still, usually potentially that same amount of paper.
Yes, ma'am. And non-labor is just that. It's non-labor costs, so it's not people. So a school will be allocated a certain dollar amount that they have that are funds that the school that come from our office, or as Mr. Ballant, he will push out a budget for each school. And in there they can use it. They have to pay for their copier. They may have to pay for not just the copier, but the copy paper, as you mentioned. Sometimes they're paying for the replacement of light bulbs and the projectors. They may have to buy new projectors. They may have to buy some additional books. They may have, there's a lot of different things that go into paper or pencils. Just a lot of different things that happens in the classroom that teachers need for students. And so that's where that non-labor comes in. And it also includes, is there something big there I'm missing, kind of, Rob, that you could think of at top?
At the school level, that's it. Anything from the supplies they use in PE, the balls, to anything that's used in the school for chairs and desks, basically the students, the chairs, the desks.
And then at the high school,
This number, or the furnishings are in this number. That's not a facilities.
No, that's right. So that's a spool. The schools have been used doing that. And then at the high school level, they also pay the officials. So out of their non-labor, that's a contract service. And so, a piece of that at the high schools up there, and I think at the middle schools, right? Is there a dollar amount at the middle schools for that too? Yes. A small portion that was dedicated toward helping to pay for officials through contracts and things of that nature. So that's really what the non-labor is about. When looking at this, I did look around and check with some other schools to see kind of how they do it. And yes, there are other schools. I I spoke with the Winchester City and what they're off, how they do their non-labor budgets, because this would also help us in the budget process for principals to know, hey, exactly what they're going to get next year. Because what the process has been is they come in and they ask for an allocation. They say, this is what I'm going to need going forward. Here's how much it's going to be. And then over the past couple of years, it's been level funding. And so when looking at it, this takes away their ask. This says you're going to get this dollar amount on this year and this year, multiply it by the number of students that you have on this day, and that's what you're going to get. That's what we're going to budget. That's what you're going to get. And it makes it simpler on our side too when it comes to the budget process. So this just shows that over a 5-year period, it's a 3% increase over basically those 5 years. So it's not a huge increase. It's being a good partner. We understand that costs do go up, and we need to realize that, and that needs to be reflected also in our requests. The next document I'd like you to look at is the 26 per pupil non-labor proposed budget. And that would be, I appreciate Ms. Ballantyne in and out these. That'd be the last one in your cap. So in here, you can look at, I asked Mr. Ballantyne to say, okay, what were our schools getting back 10 years ago? So you can see in FY15, let's just use Ressie Jeffries, for example, their budget was $64,549 in 2015. Then if you go all the way across to where you're budgeted in FY25, they were budgeted $65,897. So you're looking at an increase of just about $1,300 over a 10-year period. Now, I can tell you the cost of paper has went up probably a lot more as far as in the percentage than what the percentage was that Ressie Jeffries got for increase over the 10 years. But then you can also see what Ressie Jeffries requested. So their request was $84,000 for their non-labor cost. And again, this is our modified zero base. They break it down and they say, here's all the things we need to do. Here's all the things that we have to purchase. This is what we feel our cost is going to be going into next year with non-labor. And so then you can look at, if we use the 125 per pupil, their funding would be $81,000. So in looking at this and trying to find out, okay, well, how did you land on the numbers? Because if you look at averages, some averages are higher, some averages are lower. And the thing that I took into account was, okay, where are we currently at? Where's the school currently funded at? What was their request? Because their requests have been above what they've been budgeted for, what, past 3-4 years? Forever. So you know, and looking at how we're going to address that and to make it more uniform. And so that's when I looked at this and just kind of, where are they currently at? What was their current ask? And kind of finding that area in the middle that okay, yes, I am addressing their needs, and realizing that, hey, inflation has hit and school budgets, non-labor budgets haven't really moved much in the last 10 years. So we really need to address that. So when looking at this document, that kind of shows you some historical data. It also goes into the 23, the 24, what was budgeted, what was actual spent, what was, and then it goes into 25 and 26. Now, one thing you also have to keep in mind is that when we get into years that we know it may be tough as far as with budgets. So right now, we have had, all of our cost centers are holding at 20%. They're holding 20%. because our numbers are lower, so we are receiving less state aid this year. So we have to make up difference in student numbers. That money's got to come from somewhere. And so sometimes when you say, well, they only spent $44,000 one year and they had $55,000 was budgeted. Well, that might have been a year that it got pushed to where it was real late before that money could be released. Now, typically what we try to do is we will look at it and then we try releasing those funds if we can as early as March or April so that they can purchase those things that they need. But right now, schools and cost centers are working on 80% of the budget that was allocated because we need to make sure, also going into this year, we didn't remember there was no budget line item or revenue dedicated to the sick leave payout. So when you're going in and you're looking at all these things about, okay, I don't have a line item for that, but I got to make sure money's there. Our numbers aren't looking, our student numbers are a little lower. I've got to make sure we're going to hit that number. Or if we start seeing some increase, I can tell you what, our heating bills are going to be a lot higher over the last couple of weeks than probably they were of all last winter. Because we had some savings in our heating bills last winter. I didn't make January's taking a hit, and it's going to take a big hit on that.
I got the question where you're talking about the membership numbers. Obviously, yes, they have been dropping, but when we did the WCPS 101 meeting, the numbers for membership were something like 4,800. So I think sometimes some of these numbers include kindergarten and preschool, and sometimes the membership numbers don't. So are these numbers that I'm looking at right here on the page that we're reviewing right now, is that does include kindergarten and preschool, correct? And do all of them? Because like back in 2014, we really had much of a preschool program. So that would have been, it's just helpful to compare apples to apples and know what figures were not.
You're correct. So remember that, keep in mind that with the VDOE, you have a lot of different numbers going out there, and you are correct. The number that, for budgeting purposes, that we're going to get paid off of is only like $4,835, or 35 students, 4,835 students. But when you add our pre-K in, we're setting over 5,000 students. And so we were talking about that in the for the facilities plan with the county and going over all that stuff. So this represents all of our kids, including pre-K. Okay. So that when you see that 5,020, that would represent all pre-K as well. So just keep that in mind as well.
So I was reading materials and supplies for the students just as much as the
Right. I'm just trying to track like what we're getting money back from the state for. And then also I like to track the trends with the student numbers, because I think the 5,400 in September of 2014 would have been probably K through 12, because we really didn't have a substantial preschool program then, if I remember correctly.
I don't know. I'm not a year started there.
The size that it is now. So while we're growing our preschool program, our first grade through 12th grade numbers are shrinking pretty drastically, right? So the amount of state aid that we're getting is continuing to shrink. So our mobile in is...
Well, this year, our numbers have been holding right at about 5,000 over the past few years. It did drop this year. We're looking at numbers to see what we would project next year. But your numbers are always going to fluctuate. We have seen an increase in students enrolling. So we'll see in March kind of what the final number is, because there's two numbers that the BDOE does. They do one in October, or I guess it's a September. I always call it the October 1 count, but it's a September 30. And then they do one in March. And so when we see that one in March, that'll kind of tell us, all right, yes, we dipped at the beginning, but then between September 30th in March, we saw an increase in students coming into the district. Where are we at that point in time? Now give us a full year picture of it.
And so with the pre-K, preschool stuff, are we getting federal dollars for that, or is that 100% locally funded, or?
So that'd be a combination. You know, you do receive state aid. You know, there's a state aid category for pre-J,
Preschool-ish.
VBI, but there's also a local match for that because that's an incentive program, and so we have to meet the local match to make sure that we're implementing that program. So it's state and local. It's not all one or the other.
So that makes me think too, you're talking about numbers, pre-K 12, we also have 2, if not maybe 3, I'm not sure, programs that are for post-secondary students that we serve until 2024, I believe. Are they included in this number too? Because they, in their programs, they also had these in order to educate them. So, it's that how, are they included in that too? Because that's a requirement of the federal IDEA that we have those programs to serve, but are we getting any money so that we can make sure we're adequately serving them as well? I'm wondering if they're included too.
I would say that they would probably be included in those numbers. I will check with check with Sarah and Amy tomorrow and make sure we're at. So you listen to that question, right, Sarah? So we can get that answered and let the board know.
I'm 90% sure that they are, because they're still in Power School.
They're still in Power.
As well as graders, and they're just coded as different dumbsters. So we need to.
The thing that we have is some of our students, we are part of that regional program. And so they are in our schools. We are teaching now, but we have to take them because we get the funding through this regional program. They come out of our number and goes over here to this regional program. And they get counted over here, and then the money goes back into the schools, but they are pulled from our account and attached to that regional program. And I really want to see, and I know Mr. Ballantyne and I have talked about this, if it's truly a one-to-one, or if we're losing money on it. Because if we're losing money on it, then we don't need to be in that regional program. We need to kick our students back to us so that they're counted in our count. Because I do know that when you go through all that through the VDOE, it does pull those students out that are in those regional programs, and they don't count towards because we're not receiving the funding on it. It goes to that regional program, then the regional program pays us for those students. But we need to look at that a little closer and see if that's really a dollar per dollar. And I know we actually increased the number of students that we tagged to the regional program over the past couple of years. And so that's one thing we have to look at to make sure if some of our decrease is we've identified more students and they're going over to that regional program being counted over there, not ours, as part of that decrease of that 135 students, then are we seeing a decrease in revenue because of the regional program? So which we have to, you want to play the game that benefits us the best. If the regional program is best for us, we want to stay in it. But if it's not, then we need to get out of it. So, all right. The next document I just wanted to kind of touch base on, and then I'll let our Ms. Strick is the requested additional positions. So that's the staple document. And this document is, basically come from our cost centers. These are the needs that they have identified that they need of personnel. Now, again, this list is always long. This list is always long. And we never, we try to hit those priorities. We need to be good partners, because if you look at the back page, you can see that the requested list, the total there is about I guess I could put my glasses over. so I can see, $4.525 million. So that would be the dollar amount of requested positions from our cost centers. And it varies. And so that's when we'll go through this and I'll look at it and we'll look at our strategic plan. We'll look at where we're at with programs and what we have going on as far as a vision. And then we try to make priorities. Now, I can tell you those hold positions, those automatically go back in. So those were on hold this year due to budgeting, and we had to identify some positions that we needed to hold. And so those will go back into the budget automatically. Then also we currently are working on including our student support coaches and IAs in our figures right now. And this is a conversation for on down the line, but there is a need that we have where we're going to need staffing to support our VLA in our schools. And so this document is just for your information so that you can look at it and say, okay, this is what each school asked for, each class center, what they're kind of looking at. And then Woodley kind of put together a list, and I can tell you that the list I have right now is a lot less than that. So the next thing I'd like to discuss, Valentine, would go over the non-labor budget development page, if you don't mind. Yes, sir.
Basically, what we wanted to do was break out by each cost center, which begins with each of the schools and then goes down through the different departments, programs, whatever, what their approved non-labor budget is for this year, what their non-labor budget would be with the per pupil allocation. Now, the only ones that affects are the schools. That's the allocation that we looked at a little bit earlier on a per pupil basis. And if we were just to do that and do that alone and not increase anybody else's non-labor budget, which is not possible, but if we were to do that, that adds about $80,828 to next year's budget from this year. Then what I did was the other column is, as Dr. Ballenger mentioned, we met with each cost center, each school, and they gave their needs as far as non-labor. And this is that column, the second to last column, is what they actually requested for next year's budget. And as you can see, that adds a considerable amount to our budget. There's some highlighted in yellow that we don't have the numbers yet, and that will only add more to that increase. Those are the federal programs, and we're working to get some more solid numbers on what we can expect as far as this federal program. We won't know for sure till July or August, but we'll get a good feel.
Well, actually, we won't know for sure until September, after the budget's already done. Because these federal programs, they don't finalize your allocation until September of the following year. So that's why it's sometimes challenging when it comes to the federal program.
Down at the very bottom, I've broken out some other funds, the textbook, the capital improvement, and we just got numbers last night on that with the budget committee. So I can plug in a number there, that bottom yellow, what the requested amount is for the capital improvement fund at the very bottom.
So one thing I do also want to know, you want to talk a little bit about the textbook funds, since you mentioned it down there, what we're trying to do.
Yes, what we're trying to do is the state gives us money. One of the lines in the state budget says textbooks. And what we're looking to do, what we have done historically, is even though it says textbooks, it can be used for basically any classroom consumable materials he supplies. So we more than meet the requirement as far as the local match to receive that money, even if we don't buy textbooks. What we would like to be able to do, we've got to find a way of starting to put money in the textbook fund each year so that when we get these big adoption years that you've heard about, we have money there built up and we can do it. One way to do that would be to transfer that money that the state's giving us for textbooks that we've used basically for consumable materials and supplies in the past and transfer it to the textbook fund. If we do that, that creates a gap in our regular budget by that amount that we've been using to buy these materials and supplies that we just talked about. So it's going to require us to make up that difference in the operating budget one way or another. And certainly reducing, as you've seen, the school's non-labor budget's not the answer. Those have not grown at all over the last 10 years for all intents and purposes. And that's not an option. All right.
Yeah, and this is something that I tried to focus on because if you remember, we did a lot of textbook purchasing with some of our CARES funds because we did not have up-to-date textbooks in Warren County. What has happened in the past in Warren County is instruction will go through the adoption process. We bring in the vendors, this is before me. So what happens, they bring in the vendors, they go through all this stuff, they select the textbook, they bring it to you guys. It's like, we would like this textbook. Board votes, yes, that's the textbook we're going to adopt. But guess what? There's no money to buy the textbook, so there's never ever textbooks being purchased. You're adopting one, but you're not purchasing one. And to me, we need to be in the practice of having that money sitting there, that when it's time to purchase a textbook, we have the money to purchase a textbook, because you got to have the supplies and the materials for your teachers to be effective, for your students to make growth. Now, right now, we're pretty good on textbooks because we did quite a few adoptions with CARES funds. Now, some of those are cycling out, and it's time to redo those, and so that's why we need to start. We actually need to do an adoption, is it this year? And what?
Math and social studies.
Math and social studies. So that math adoption is a pretty hefty. Your two heavy ones are math and English. And those are easily going to be $600,000 to $800,000. And if you don't have the funds in there, then that means we're using an outdated textbook next year if we don't have a way to purchase these textbooks. And that's why I'm trying to get this money going into that account so that it will be able to stay in that account, and then we will be able to make these purchases when they arise.
I'm sorry, I don't usually interject. Can I say one thing about that? Just understand too that the textbook purchase is the online access as well. So yes, we could still maintain the physical copies of the book, and sometimes that comes up with members of the community. Well, math's the same this year as it was last year. Can we not just continue to use those books, sort of exponentially? And that is true. We do maintain the copies of the books, but we lose the online access. Teachers will lose it. Students, parents will lose that as well if we don't enter into a new contract. And textbook companies have caught on. They bundle those prices. The price of an individual online license runs typically around, during the last adoption years, about $10 cheaper than a textbook and online license bundle. So it seems like it would be a lot less expensive to buy just online books and not have physical copies, but that's not how they're priced by the textbook companies for the most part.
So the next document, we'd like to go through this panel. Do you have anything else to cover on that one? Does anybody has any questions? Okay. So the next document, I'll turn it over to Ms. Drake, and she can go over one. You have this blue and white document. That's just the Region 4. You want to talk about that first and then go into the South
Do. So we had our budget committee meeting yesterday, and we did have a few notes just I think there was some decimals versus commas, and a position that was shrunk off. So the copy you have are from those notes that we did make and talked about yesterday, not the title change. But the online version, there are a few things that had been updated from our meeting yesterday. But the last one, the benchmark, this is just within our Region 4, just to see a comparison of our salaries and how we rank. I don't want to make us sound less attractive by any means, but I do think it's a good comparison when you look at our salary scales versus surrounding areas and where we rank. It does have it by experience, and it's a bachelor's on top and a master's on bottom. So I think it's just good to be able to see that data when you then look at our pay scales. And this is for teachers specific. So I'll go over every pay scale that we can tonight, but there are 4 that I really want to highlight that have the most changes to them. So as we go into the salary scales, I just want to note that the change of the optics and how it reads, I feel is significantly better. So there's a lot of work on the back end within the HR department when we offer somebody, especially if they are a teacher on a 200-day contract, but yet we are going to make them an 11-month teacher, and how we calculate out those days. I think as, an outsider coming in, when I look at the scales, I'm like, what does that mean? What's this, what am I actually going to get? So I think it's just more transparent. So I think the imaging and the transparency is better. Hopefully you will agree. They should have page numbers at the bottom, and of course the copy I printed for myself with my notes on it don't have that, so I'll try to keep up, sorry. I know we made that change yesterday, I just didn't reprint mine. I'm sorry, I do have a copy.
And you had to just use that one side by side. So
So the first few pages do have our teacher scale. So the biggest change here is 3%, because that is what we are allowed to do, plus step. All of our other, majority of our other scales are 3% inclusive, so not plus step, but the teacher scale is plus step. So if you look at page 3, in the top left-hand corner, this is just a 200-day teacher contract. It is still grade 1 through 5. We'll look at name changes.
We talked about that. We're going to work on it. We got first, Griffin.
Have a solution. It's okay.
We had extensive discussions on that last night about page numbers and the renaming that as
the scale.
Yes. So we're going to have a new name. We just haven't added that on here yet. But I agree. Again, outside looking in, I was like, whoa, it's a 6th and 7th grade 10. Like, man, he brought money. No, I get it. And we will make that adjustment. It just hasn't been hashed out yet. So that'll have the grades. The grade 1 is just the base. And then as you have grade 2, which is your bachelor's plus 15 credit hours, and then we go into your master's plus 30, and then your doctorate. So that'll just tell you what your compensation will be with the degree that you have. Before we had it listed at the bottom, like the supplement that they would get. Now it's just added in so you can actually see it for transparency. And then the 200-day teacher scale, who it all includes for the positions. And so that's also listed on here as well. So when you go to page 4, we do have 205-day teachers. And so you can see the difference because we are compensating them for 5 additional days. Again, with the positions listed out, these are all 3% plus step for the salary changes.
Is there an example of a 200 versus 205?
Like as far as the position?
Position, like a reading specialist. Yeah, on the bottom there, if you see like Jamet, like a reading specialist.
Oh, sorry. Yes, just didn't read all the way down to the bottom.
Yeah. And we use the teacher scale for a lot of positions. And so having that for them to also be aware is helpful. Page 5 is our 210-day teacher. So that's your technology induction coach, high school librarian. Again, it's just laying out the different degrees of, and what they have.
And it's a 3%. This one's 3% plus step.
Correct, yes. All of the teacher scale will be 3% plus step, yes. All right, page 6 is our, and if I'm going too fast or you have questions, it's just the optics and 3% on there, but I'll stop, and if you want to take a minute, I'm on it. Okay, got it.
Could I suggest also adding the year on here? Just like in case this page gets separated. Oh, yeah, ages, so we know. The current. That's why I'm talking now.
Yes. Instead of just having it up at the front, have it on each page. That's a good idea also.
All right. So page 6 was our 11-month teacher. Page 7 is our 12-month teachers. Again, no changes. And then we do have our deans on page 8. And 12-month coordinators on page 9. And those are also all listed out on who that encompasses.
You know, think about it, and when I caught, I don't think we just called it anything. It was just base plus teen, master's, doctorate. Like, I'm not geese. Oh, another word for it.
Right. We had talked yesterday just about, like, it's the teacher scale. And so maybe just saying 200-day teacher and then scale 1 through 5 for
Just like shifting it.
Or like you said, just the teacher scale to maybe right. Yeah, the bachelor plus 50. Yeah.
So from our like payroll side and then our contract side, like we have those listed out. So just figuring out how to still show everybody what scale they're on, and just because it is what they're used to. So, but I agree, because I still think green is a good new change.
Would there be any way to find out or add on here for each one of these different pages, like 12-month coordinator, 12-month teacher, the number of employees that fall into each category? So, for instance, how many 12-month coordinator salary scale employees do we have?
Yeah. I do have the FTP report. I have it broken down by title, not necessarily, because teacher will fall under teacher, where you might have a teacher on a 200-day or 205, 210. But in our payroll system, like, we can run that by pay grade and even step to see how many there are in each group. Well,
And we give that information to the.
I gotta be like helpful during
And she is
the
working.
process with the supervisors.
Yep. Yep. All right. Page 10 is our instructional assistants. So again, just the optics of, your base, having your associates and then bachelors. We do have the CNA supplement listed at the bottom. And then we compress the scales starting at step 2. So our step 1 right now, I had to bring up current one with me, is, I believe, $17,772. So what we did for the compression is we just started them at step 2 at $18,683. So that way they are still getting the increase. But again, just kind of being competitive as well. Our instructional assistants, I don't need to preach to everybody, but they do so much and are very valued and appreciated and needed in the work that they do. And so, making sure that we're compensating them appropriately as well. So increasing that for them. And then we put the days, so our IAs are 184-day contracts. So we've just actually listed that at the bottom so they know like what they're working, and we did that on all scales as well.
Is this one 3% plus?
So it's actually a little bit more.
Well,
Because we compressed it.
but it is still that.
Yes.
A little bit more, but it's meant to.
Yes. So what are you at 30% plus a step of what we were trying? But when we said, okay, one of the things I was wanting to look at was 30 years as an instructional assistant, we needed to compress that. What I would like to get this scale to is a 20-year scale. And so when we looked at, are we at a 3% plus a step, or are we, if we compress it, will that benefit the employee? And I think our compression, when we did the figure, it actually benefited the employee by doing the compression on the 2 steps, which helps us get closer to that 20-year scale.
All right. Page 11 is administrative assistance. So this is 3% inclusive again, adding the days on the bottom, for the contract, and then the associates and bachelors. Page 12 is our head school secretary. Again, 3% inclusive. Just kind of cleaning up the format. I'll keep repeating the format change. Page 13 is our school secretaries. 3% inclusive. Page 14 is our automotive specialist. Our journeyman is grade 12, page 15. Again, just the 3% inclusive. Maintenance is grade 13 on page 16. 3% inclusive, just cleaning up format. And then page 17 is our bus driver. So this one does have a change. So right now, just in talking to our transportation department, we are pushing over 4.5 hours. So either the route is getting bigger. I know that we've compressed some routes as well. But between to and from the weather, whatever it might look like, they are going over the 4.5 hours. So we want to be able to change it to 5. So their scheduled day would be 5 hours. We couldn't just change it to 5 hours, then they would be losing money. So they'd be giving us an extra half an hour and not being compensated for that. So that does reflect an increase with the 5 hours as well. So it is more than the 3%, but we are increasing their time per day as well. So fair on both ends.
Why do we give pay increases for degrees for associates and bachelor's degrees to bus drivers? Does it really seem relevant? I would think years of experience would equal our. Is there a way that we consider just consolidating that and giving?
I would want to look at,
Like that.
yeah. Well, I want to look at why did they become a bus driver? Were they a teacher before and being compensated, and they just wanted to rise and retire? I would want to look at some more data on how many years of experience they have, or maybe why, and then how many even get the supplement. That'd be relevant. All right. Page 18 is grade 25, administrator 1. Again, just kind of cleaning it up with the positions, and then 3% inclusive. Page 19 is administrator 3. 3% inclusive, cleaning up the format. Therapists, age 20. Just the 3% inclusive as well. On page 21, what the community members won't see is the high school principal title listed, but the printout you have, it does. So it was on a line, but the page cut off. And so they're on the scale. All right, and then page 22 for our speech therapists. So we did update this. So they're required to have their masters. So the old scale, it just had it listed as a supplement, but it's required. So we've taken that supplement and we've added it into the scale because it is required for the position anyways. We did also compress the scale, so it's now starting at 68,346 verse. Oh, didn't I name out? Oh, yes. I actually brought a definition for that for myself. Yes. So we talked about yesterday in our budget meeting the C's. Yeah. So I will relook at that on there as well. I was going to tell you where we started. I didn't make a note. I just said that we compressed the scale and where we started. So originally it was 59,795. But you have to see on the step 0 with the 10-month base at 68,346 is also adding in that degree. So it's not that it was just a huge jump, but we added in what they were already getting because it's already required. So just both transparency there. All right, our RNs. So this one will come with pending positions and also what gets approved. So we had removed from our miscellaneous scale the nurse coordinator, and we added it to their actual scale for the 7,500. We did also compress the scale starting at year 4, and they are a non-exempt. It says it'll be non-exempt for our nurses. If we have the nurse coordinator position, they would be exempt because they would be a supervisor, more or less overseeing personnel and meet the Fair Labor Standards Act definition. So they're both listed on here and highlighted because that could change depending on what gets approved or doesn't. But just wanted you to be able to see how that would actually reflect later on. Again, just a more competitive market for our RAs. Prior to me being hired, I heard that we had a struggle getting nurses in the buildings, and we've been using CNAs. And so now that we're full, hopefully we can keep it that way, and they're happy with the compensation. All right. Page 24 is our level 1 specialist. Again, listed on here. 3% inclusive. Page 25 is our system technicians. That would also be 3% inclusive. Page 26 for our social workers. Then 3% inclusive. Page 27 for our supervisors. Again, 3% inclusive. Page 28 for our school psychologists. So again, it is required to have a master's, so cleaning that up and adding that into the pay scale. So if you look at the old versus the new, it looks like there's a jump, but if it's required, we just added it in. So that way nobody's looking at the bottom and they know that it's required when being hired. All right, and then our student support on 29. So what we would like to do is increase. So right now, a 2-year associate's degree on the student support is $40,000. So now we are looking at $44,000 on a 195-day contract, and that would get them to the exempt status that they were prior to all of the federal changes with our minimum wage. So this would get them back to where they were and were compliant. So, and then with your bachelor's degree, that would be a 200-day contract similar to our teachers at $48,000, and that would put them back at non-exempt.
And so for this one, there's no steps. So
Right. Those are the ones that don't have the degrees. And so until they get their degrees, and remember, we added the 2-year degree, or for those that are a grow your own program, that when they got to that point of where they needed to do maybe their student teaching of the prac field to where they could teach that year, that we would put them on this step because they would be the the staff member of record, but they're August instead of an instructional assistant skill.
I don't understand. You said this says bachelor's degree, but you're saying they don't have a degree.
There is one a 2-year degree, and then you have a bachelor's degree.
Like they might have a bachelor's degree in, woodworking. But they're but they're
Or no. I'm saying it's so just, but they don't have teacher certification. So the bachelors don't have their teacher certification, and the 2-year degree. Those are those that they don't. They just have their associates. They don't have their bachelors yet. Yeah. Okay, I got you. So, but because they are in that classroom serving in that role, working through our Grow Your Own, they're basically serving it. Yes, they're serving in that role.
they don't follow. By set they don't wait there. Remind me.
All right, and then we have our miscellaneous scales. So this is daily rates and then hourly rates for some of the various positions that maybe we have part-times for or substitutes for or after-school programs, things of that nature. So just clean that up. If you look at our last one, it's very hard to read. It's very tiny. So some of it we had added to the pay scale, and then this is just also kind of looking at what we haven't been using and what we can get rid of. So then, just again, to make it easier to read.
Were you able to work up any numbers to find out what the difference would be?
Would you like me to share that now?
That was a good time, yeah.
Or are you talking about what's maybe I should clear?
And to find it from if for the added price, I mean, what it's all cost us this year.
We were talking about something yesterday, so I thought, sorry, we're looking at that for the.
No,
we're still working at the part-time and then what those salaries and what it would actually impact. Most of these salaries are the same. We did increase it this year just because we did go from $12 to $15. But as far as with our coaches on the next page, that's not yet done.
We're seeing the whole thing, where the whole impact for all the salary scales, what's going to be.
Yeah, I don't think we
We need to update it for the scales that have been adjusted, those few that have been, and then for the adjustments to the supplements and things.
So we did not get to that today.
You have some kind of initial number, though, for the teachers and instructional assistants with the 3%?
Yes, we do have for some skills, but for some of those skills that were adjusted, like the instructional assistant, that one would be different. But we do have that for teachers. We would have that for administrative assistants and secretaries. Basically, all others except for those that have been adjusted.
Because when we're talking about this 3% increase, that is funding from the state, but doesn't cover the entire increase. But in order for us to get that funding from the state, and we have to,
You have to do.
just as a reminder, everybody in this conversation every year when that's thrown out there, that it's not just a given money.
Correct.
And our LCI is
At rated 0.45 and full cut fraction.
so you're looking at 45%. So here's what the state say. When they give us money, they don't give us on what the cost is for the person that's taking the job. They give us their portion of an average. So that average may be lower than a person coming in. So we're losing money on paying us. They will fund basically what they will fund 55%. We fund 45% from the locality or from the school.
As they only fund the SOQ position, which we at every other school division.
It's now more. We are not the only division that has more SOQ. Every, that's what is SOQ? When we look at us, when we look at our kindergarten standards of quality, when we look at our kindergarten, you can have up to 25 to 30 kids in a kindergarten class, but is that best practice? So then you have to look at classroom size reduction. And so with ours, some of our classes can't be over 20. So now if you had 3 classes of 30, but your game go over 20. So now you have to create these up. So now you have another teacher in there that may not be an SOQ teacher. So
To give us the young bear there. I know.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yes.
All right, page 31 is the BHSL poach scale. This is significantly different as well. I think when we were talking to our athletic directors that have some tenure, they were like, couldn't tell you the last time this has changed. It's definitely been over 10 years. This is just kind of a flat fee that we are paying them instead of taking it by, however many years. Like right now it's 0 to 7. One of our coaches would only make like $782 right now on our scale, and the time that they put into this, I think we would all agree that it's valued more. But this would just be a flat. If you were a coach for us, this would be what you get regardless if you have 1 year or you have 20 years experience. So. And then we have our supplements on page 32.
So that's just kind of informational purposes. And so at this point, I would just like, to hear from the board. Are there any priorities from the board? I know I've talked to the budget committee concerning that, but I wanted to bring this forward to the full board to see if there are any priorities that you want us to look at as we're continuing to address this and make changes that we're making now.
I appreciate the non-labor budget change that you're trying to propose here. And I like that you've extended it out over multiple years because we held black on those schools for a few years now. And this way, at least there is a plan in place. And for the budget year, as we go into it, you can look ahead to see what the increase will be. I think it makes it it does. It makes it more fair across those schools.
Do we have any idea if the unused sick leave payout is going to, is it working in keeping people coming to work so that we're not funding the additional subs?
Well, higher at the beginning of the year than where we are now. So people are definitely using it. Part of our policy is that if there is a snow day and they, aren't getting out, like they would actually use that sick leave, especially if they don't have, personal time.
That would count for
Teachers, because they're already getting it. So anybody that, is required to be in that couldn't. So that might reduce some of it, but.
Yeah, and I think one thing we need to look at, I was talking to a couple of teachers and was talking about the sick leave payout. And they're like, hey, when are we going to get that? I was like, well, did you sign your form? Because it was sending an email. They're like, I don't remember a form. Like, well, if you didn't sign the form, you're not eligible. So I think, next year they're like, well, I'll have to go back and see if I remember that email or if I got that email. So I was just talking to a couple of teachers about that the other day. So I think moving forward, we need to make sure that teachers are receiving a notification and an announcement and something else to say, if you want this, you get your form in. Otherwise, you're not going to get it because, we could come down here to the end of the year. Some teachers say, well, where's my payout? We're going to say, well, you did sign your form. And we emailed it out to everybody. How many times did we email? What other announcements were going out? So I think moving forward, we probably need to do a better job of making sure that is advertised to teachers to see how many are going to want to join that as well.
I think since it's the first year that we've done it, it's kind of like, well, what's that look like? What's this mean? Where now that I think we've talked about it enough and they've seen it too, that next year we might have an increase of participants, But
is it going to save us money like we intended, or is it going to cost us a boatload of money like we feared?
I mean, when we look at where we're at with ESS and, having to utilize them, and then we look at, people leaving mid-year and having to cover them, I think something to really consider too is, I talked to our benefits specialists, and the amount of people that have been out on short-term, long-term, or FMLA also have a significant impact on how, many subs that we're using. So I think we'll have really good data at the end of the year to see how it actually worked. But right now, I think we're still learning.
I don't think you're going to see a huge savings. I think the last time we looked, wasn't it about $40,000 that we were thinking that the sick leave payout was going to cost us with the network?
Was significantly less than what we calculated
Right.
last year.
Because we were calculating about $250,000. And I think with the people that had signed the form that hadn't used the days, and then depending on if they're an IA or a teacher, that was running about 40. You saw that it's about 100,000 right now. If we push some of that money back into the, so you're only looking at about $60,000 saving, which a savings is a savings. Don't get me wrong. I'll take $10,000 savings. So, but I don't think it's going to astronomical.
Well, and I think really, with any kind of program, you really have to do it a few years
To get a,
to really get a good, baseline. Because it, like you said, this first year, what are, always looking back, what can we do differently? What can we do better? How can we improve it? And if we continue to move forward, we'll get some more understanding of it in long term after, at least by the third year. So
I think with that program too, it's very difficult to tell if they're saving this money because we don't know what we was incurred this year if we didn't do it. And are we just rewarding people that the same behavior they had as far as missing days from years past? Or, is it incentivizing people to not use their sick leave for whatever reason? And then, this year we've had the flu, the virus, and things going around. So it's hard to compare to me one year to the next to see if it really does.
so again, just any priorities that the board would like for us to evaluate or look at it, or kind of, if you don't have anything at this point in time, I would recommend that you reach out to the budget committee. If you want them and us to look at something, relay that through the budget committee. And because we're meeting at least every other week, what between our meetings and what other meeting we're supposed to schedule, which we don't know if we'll have our meeting on Tuesday or not next week, but we're making a good faith effort.
diligently work to be trying.
So
Can we talk about those employees that we hired to CARES funding and then we're bond with the all-in tutoring? What is their situation? What are we considering with that?
all right, so that cost is about $1.2 million. We do not have any other funding for that. We've used CARES, we used our all-in tutoring this last time, and that's all gone. So we do have an issue to where we have about 527 students on a reading plan, and these people are helping with those interventions. They are bachelor level. We have 2 bachelor level, 1 IA, and we have put in a lot of training for them to be able to utilize and to do that remediation. Right now, they're included in the salary. But we are sending them a notice that funding is running out, that their position may be done away with, or maybe going through a rift with the IAs. So we are going to be sending those out. We are looking and discussing. I would like to keep them in our current state. I can tell you that, if we get rid of some of our bachelor level people, you're getting rid of some people that have had big impacts in their schools. Huge impacts, and what's that going to do to our schools and to our students and to that school community? And I can tell you right now, with the requirements of BLA, if we don't have that staff, teachers aren't able to. They don't have the time. That they're not able to do that. This is a pull-out, small group, one-on-one intervention program, and teachers just don't have the time. And so now we have to have something, whether it's in our current state or whether it's we bring in all instructional assistants. Maybe you do away with bachelor positions, but that's not a lot of savings. You could be saving about $200,000-$300,000 if you did that. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, but it's not a huge number. So right now I'm putting them in there because that's, talking to my assistant superintendent for instruction back there and talking to my principals with the needs that they have was where we're at with the BLA at what these people are doing. And doesn't that move to K through 8 next year?
It is supposed to, yes. It's firmly at K3 implementation this year, and we're supposed to add the 4th through 8th grade.
So we're currently 527 students on a Rini plan K3. Now, you add 4-8 next year to it. Where are we going to get the resources to support these students? That's what I'm looking at. There is a need for that.
Because that's definitely one of the things that I've heard the most in talking with administrators and our teachers is how impactful those folks have been for their teams, and people are scared about losing them. So yeah, if you're talking about priorities, I know it is expensive and it would be hard to do, but I do think I would consider that a high priority to keep as many of them as we can keep.
This one.
Cool. Or you refer to
21.
Yeah, 21. And basically the breakdown of that, Ms. Ayla, is you have 2 bachelor and 1 instructional assistant at each of the elementary schools except for A.S. Rhodes. They have 1 bachelor and 1 instructional assistant. You also have 2 bachelor and an instructional assistant at both middle schools. And then you have 1 bachelor level at both high schools. And that should give you your 21. All right.
Thanks. That brings us to an end of our work sessions this evening. Is there an action to convene closed session?
This motion is made that this open public meeting of Warren County School Board become a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711. The school board desires to discuss the following matter at a closed meeting. Section 2.2-3711A1. Discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of employees of this full board, specifically the personnel report and the personnel report addendum.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Mr. Ballantyne, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Dr. Fung?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Mr. McFadden?
Aye.
Madam Chair? Aye. Mrs. Salins?
Aye. Thank you. Like a 5-minute